I have a lot of people who have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
Just 3 days after Diddy was sentenced to over 4 years in prison on prostitution charges, President Donald Trump seems to confirm he's heard from the mogul's legal team.
In a stunning twist that's shaken both Hollywood and Washington, Sean Diddy Combs has reportedly ordered his legal team to file an emergency appeal just hours after a federal judge's harsh sentencing decision. But behind the legal panic, whispers are spreading that former President Donald Trump might have dropped a cryptic comment hinting at something far more explosive, a potential pardon.
City potentially. You know, I told you, the head of the Union Pacific Railroad said, "Sir, save Chicago. It's a great city. It's going to be lost if you don't do it." We have no choice but to do this. And when judges give us rulings that, you don't have to do it, Portland is on fire. Portland's been on fire for years, and not so much saving it. We have to save something else, because I think that's all insurrection. I really think that's really criminal insurrection. So I appreciate the question. These are unsafe places. We're going to make them safe.
And invoke the Insurrection Act, sir.
What?
The Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you invoke?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe. And it's turning out, and we started with D.C. It's been so successful. Think of it. People wouldn't go to restaurants. The restaurants were closing. We were losing a lot of restaurants, as you all know. And now restaurants are opening and they're thriving. Not only is it not under control, it's the opposite. And I believe they're afraid. They're scared for their lives. You look at what's happened with Portland over the years. It's a burning hellhole. And then you have a judge that lost her way, that tries to pretend that like there's no problem. Actually, she's not even saying that. There's a huge problem in Portland. I'll tell you what the problem is. Crime. Okay, crime. There's a huge problem in Chicago. It's called crime. And we want to put out the crime, and they want to inflame the crime.
Mr. President, Governor Abbott offered up the Texas National Guard to you. Have you had any other conversations with other red state governors?
Yeah, I have. They're willing to offer. Every one of them is willing to offer whatever we need. We thank Governor Abbott of Texas. Every one of the red state, as you call them, red state governors is willing to give whatever we need, because they want our agents protected. You know, these ICE agents have a tough job. They have to go in and get, in many cases, stone cold criminals, hardened criminals, long-time criminals. And every, essentially, Republican governor has offered up whatever we need. And some Democratic governors also. Daniel?
Yeah. The Supreme Court is back in session. Yeah. They rejected today an appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to overturn her conviction. That means her only chance at getting out of prison is a pardon from you. Is that something you're open to?
Who are we talking about?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
You know, I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ. I wouldn't consider it or not consider it. I don't know anything about it. So, but I will speak to the DOJ.
Why would she be a candidate for clemency, sir?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to speak to the DOJ. I'll look at it. I have a lot of people who have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
But she was convicted of child sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I'd have to ask DOJ. I didn't know they rejected it. I didn't know she was even asking for it, frankly.
Inside the courtroom, witnesses say Diddy's face went cold. The judge's ruling was final, sharp, and left no room for negotiation. Within minutes, Diddy's lawyer was on the phone, racing against time to file what insiders are calling the fastest appeal motion in hip-hop legal history. According to leaked reports, the emergency appeal was filed under Section 1292 of the U.S. Judicial Code, typically reserved for urgent cases where immediate relief is demanded. Sources close to the defense claim Diddy personally pushed for it, fearing that if the appeal wasn't logged within 24 hours, his entire legal strategy would collapse.
Apprentice. Problem is, some comments Diddy made about Trump in recent years as Diddy really entered the political realm. There's a video where he's speaking to radio host Charlemagne saying, if Trump gets elected, I really do believe in my heart there'll be a race war. In another video on Revolt, he says white men like Trump need to be banished. And by the way, you know who's not letting anyone forget this? Combs' rival 50 Cent. Took to social media recently, wrote, see, Trump don't like S like this, buddy. You run your mouth too much. And Donald doesn't take well to disrespect and doesn't forget who chooses to go against him. While working tirelessly to make America great again, there is no room for distraction. He would consider pardoning anyone who is being mistreated, not Puff Daddy. And let me tell you, the idea of Trump pardoning Diddy is not getting a ton of love out there. Conservative commentator Megyn Kelly posted on X, Trump should not pardon Diddy. He doesn't deserve it. He's a Trump hater. He's a woman abuser. MAGA is already upset over elites seeming to cover for each other. This would not help. GOP struggling with young female voters, most of whom will hate a Diddy pardon. And then you just had other random accounts like America First. What? He's actually considering this? Diddy is a depraved, abusive, sexual deviant who should be spending the rest of his life in prison. If Trump pardons him, he will get absolutely crushed. Who is advising him lately? It's looking like straight up sabotage at this point. There were other accounts that were not in favor of it, although there was this account. Milo posted on X, Trump has no choice but to pardon Diddy after the government, led by James Comey's daughter Maureen, simply lost interest in Diddy's guilt the moment they secured his tapes, incriminating powerful Democrats. The prosecution was a shambles. The trial was a farce. Now, I want to talk about if this is really going to happen, how it would happen. Also, if it really depends on bail and sentencing, then what are we talking about? And I have somebody who not only has been following the Diddy case from the very beginning, not only is a renowned criminal defense attorney, but actually has obtained federal pardons from the president, including from Donald Trump. By the way, for his clients Kodak Black and Lil Wayne, those were maybe the most notable. I'm joined by Bradford Cohen. Bradford, thank you so much for coming here on Sidebar. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jess.
Now, before I even get into the pardon, okay, there was a bit of breaking news before we were going to come on. This is what I want to get your opinion on first. So Combs' defense team filed a memo in support of a motion for judgment of acquittal, or in the alternative, a motion for a new trial. And basically, I know you read through it, but basically the evidence, they would say, is insufficient to sustain that conviction. Their main arguments.
The entertainment world exploded. Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube filled with disbelief, not just over the speed of the filing, but the rumor that followed. A Trump quote circulating on social media, allegedly hinting that Diddy might not be locked up forever. No one could confirm where or when Trump said it, but the internet was already on fire. The alleged Trump quote appeared first on X. Diddy got a raw deal. Maybe someday things change. Within hours, it had 10 million views, then disappeared. The post was flagged, accounts were suspended, and screenshots went viral. Was it real? No mainstream outlet confirmed it, but the timing, right after the sentencing, was impossible to ignore.
Money, so actually pimping those women across state lines and making money off of their sexual exploits. Obviously, that's not the case here. It's used so infrequently, it might have been a handful of people who were actually charged with the Mann Act. No one in custody currently has ever been convicted of the Mann Act. So it's an interesting argument to say, hey, listen, this Mann Act, the original reason for it was racist. The original way that it was applied was racist. The way it's applied here is incorrect because he was not making any money from quote unquote pimping or getting these women across, or men getting them across state lines. None of that was being done. This was all being done for entertainment purposes. So it's an interesting argument. I don't think this judge buys it. It might be interesting on an appeal, but I don't think the judge is going to give him a judgment of acquittal on those two counts based on the argument. Now, the more interesting argument to me, and it's their last argument for new trial, is that, listen, if you were just going to charge him with these two counts, which I originally said when I looked at all the evidence, and don't forget, I was getting calls during this trial from individuals that were telling me, hey, I have information that exonerates what they're saying against Sean Combs, essentially saying that Cassie and others were participating more than just having sex in a room. They were participating more than that. They were paying people. They were hiring people. They were sending me pictures even when Diddy wasn't around. They were asking me to come over even when Diddy wasn't around. These are what these witnesses were telling me, which is really Brady evidence. And I don't know if that was ever turned over. But the more interesting argument is that all these counts were charged. The only thing he was convicted of were the Mann Acts. And he probably wouldn't have been convicted of these Mann Acts but for all this other stuff that came in to try and prove these counts that they could not prove and did not have a basis for bringing.
Let me just challenge you on that, because this is a jury who didn't find that there was sex trafficking. And I can't confirm that they found him guilty of the Mann Act because of the hotel video or anything else. I mean, it seems to me that they might have convicted him on that based on the travel records, the payment receipts, all about that. Not even necessarily allegations of violence. I mean, do you think that it was because of, let's say, the Intercontinental Hotel video that he was convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution? It always felt to me that they proved that charge based purely on, the documents.
Well, I always feel like during a trial, whenever you get a guilty verdict on one of the counts or two of the counts out of 6 or 7, you think to yourself, is it because of these other things that they brought up? How bad he is, he's not a good guy, the video came out. Sometimes juries will split the baby, meaning, there's people that want to convict, there's people that don't want to convict, and they're like, okay, let's convict him on these acts. We can all agree we can convict him on these acts. He's not a good guy. He transported these women, these men across state lines. Let's convict him on this. There's always going to be a question of that. The only way to not have a question of that, obviously, is when the jury comes out, someone gives an interview and says, hey, this is why we did it, is because, this tape was so bad and these other incidents were so bad that we were like, we can't just let him walk with nothing. So we convicted him on the Mann Acts. Now, we don't have a juror saying that. Do I think eventually jurors are going to start coming out? Yeah, I think so. I think some of these jurors are going to come out. They're going to want to do some interviews, not before sentencing. And I think after sentencing, I think some of them will come out and we'll discuss it, because I think that was the feeling I was getting from this jury and the reactions they had to Comey's close.
Former federal prosecutors began breaking it down. Could a presidential pardon even apply if Diddy was convicted under both federal and state charges? The short answer, only partially. A federal pardon would erase federal convictions, but state penalties could still stand. Then came a statement from Diddy's lawyer. Calm, brief, and strategic. We have filed an emergency appeal to protect Mr. Combs's constitutional rights and preserve his opportunity for fair review. That was it. No mention of Trump, no mention of political connections. But insiders claim the timing wasn't coincidence. A viral thread then linked Diddy's past White House visits, dating back to 2016, showing photos of him at events with political donors and lobbyists. Some speculated those same contacts might now be pushing behind the scenes for political leverage, a whisper campaign about a future pardon if Trump returns to power.
General to the 5 or the 6 U.S. attorney team. I think their reactions in general were very noticeable, and I think that this is a jury that wants to talk to people once I think he gets sentenced.
Okay, so now let's move on to the pardon discussion. So if he can't get relief from the court in getting the conviction thrown out or a new trial, can he get relief through a pardon? Before we talk about, is this a real thing, what is the process to even obtain a federal pardon? How do you even go about that?
Sure. So it's a pardon or a commutation. If someone is actually in custody, they could also get a commutation, which does not wipe the crime off your record. It just allows you to get out of jail. So he has that option to give him a commutation. If he gets sentenced, he can also give him a commutation. But as for the process, there's an application on the DOJ website, and I'm part of some charities that also do a lot of pro bono work for pardons and commutations. You can fill out this form, DOJ website. It essentially lists, the reasons why you should get a pardon, what kind of community service you've done, things of that nature. There's a separate application for a commutation, but you can file a pardon application, and you could also say, hey, listen, if it's not a pardon, I'm looking for a commutation. You attach your indictment. You would reasons why you feel your crime was unfairly, you were unfairly prejudiced or unfairly convicted. all of those things go into the packet. I always try to help people that are filling it out on their own to show them, what to point out. Those type of cases are always heartening, because those people deserve pardons. They deserve commutations if they're in, and it's some sort of crazy drug offense that was brought up in the 90s. All of those things are reasons for pardons and commutations.
So is this real? I mean, here's the thing. He is in a much better position to get a pardon or a commutation of his sentence because he wasn't convicted of sex trafficking and racketeering. There is a way to justify this based on some of the arguments I just mentioned that his defense team is making, that maybe he shouldn't have been brought up on this. The I-Man Act, not as serious as what he's facing. Is this real? Do you think that this is going to happen? That he's going to get a pardon or a commutation from President Trump?
I don't know if he's going to get one. I do think that it's real because, like I said before, President Trump, whether they like him, don't like him, if he feels something is wrong, and we've seen this happen before in the past, if he feels something is wrong, someone got railroaded, someone was convicted, wrongfully, he will take a look at that. Yeah, Sean Combs has said things in the past that probably were not great. I've read them, but I think that if anyone understands that, I mean, look at President Trump's cabinet. There's individuals on his cabinet. His vice president has said things in the past that weren't great for him. But he understands that people evolve, people change their minds. People understand that there's certain requirements, things that are going on, certain pressures that they're under. And I don't think that would affect whether or not he would grant a pardon or commutation based on things that were said in the past. I think it would be based on what he gets sentenced to, or based on the facts of the Mann Act, that the Mann Act itself, I think, is unconstitutional. I think there's issues the way that it was applied in this case.
But from an optics point of view, I don't know, moral point of view, what about everything that came out of trial? The texts, is
Hollywood's
really
response
echoing
was divided.
what we've talked about a
Some
little bit
A-listers
when it
stayed
came to the
silent,
bail
fearing
analysis,
political
but
backlash.
that his
Others,
prosecution, his
including
conviction
past
on these Mann Act
collaborators,
prostitution
began
charges
speaking out,
is so
suggesting the
unique.
case had
He
become
wasn't
less about
profiting off of
justice
this business.
and more
All
about
consenting
power.
adults were involved.
Meanwhile,
The jury
Trump
didn't find that there was
himself
any
stayed
sex
silent.
trafficking.
No
They
tweets,
argued this
no
isn't even
comments, only one
prostitution per
moment
se,
during
it's
a campaign
voyeurism.
stop when
That
a
the
reporter
intent
shouted,
wasn't
"Would
for
you
people to
pardon
travel
Diddy?"
for sex.
Them of instances of violence, etc. But she's choked. She looks a certain way physically because of the injuries, and she's still being required to do this. And he is saying more emphatically that thou shalt, you have to do this. And so, yeah, that's a little bit more like it in terms of you looking at the forced part of this particular crime.
I'll tell you what's important. I think this is important. So we're talking multiple sex workers or male performers being allegedly used here. I believe we have names or nicknames like Don, Cabral, Leo, Antoine, Paul. And there was testimony about how the men were flown out and how they were paid. Like this back and forth. She was asked, do you know how Cabral got from Atlanta to each of these cities? By plane. Do you know who paid for his plane ticket? Maybe either me or sometimes Jess. Who is Jess? The travel agent. Whose travel agent? Sean's. In what cities or countries do you remember seeing Paul for these hotel nights? I remember seeing Paul in Los Angeles, Miami, and Turks. Although she did testify that he apparently booked his own travel or was already there. But she testified that she saw Combs hand cash to the male performers. She testified that Combs' security or assistants like Christina Coram would give him cash. She testified that she helped to pick the performers and even arrange for the flights of one male performer named Sly from Atlanta to New York, and she paid him $2,000 to $4,000. She claims that she got the money from Combs. She testified how Combs arranged performers to come over too, and she testified that the assistants had set up the rooms. Now, Joe, to me, does this all help a clear-cut case of transportation to engage in prostitution? One of the charges that Sean Combs faces, he actually faces two, one with respect to Cassie and one with respect to Jane. Does this support this? Does it support maybe even racketeering as we talk about the people in his inner circle?
I would say it absolutely supports transportation. And we've talked about this before, the whole idea that if you cut away the crimes and you're looking at the possibilities related to them, you would seem to have transportation because clearly they're flying people from one place to another, arranging for people's flights. These are people that you don't otherwise know, other than for their reputation as sex workers, if that. And you're flying them out there, and then you're paying them once they get in and have them engaged in sex acts. So, yeah, I think that there's an argument there. Now, the racketeering, perhaps. I've always thought that this was more of the square peg in a round hole kind of situation. But that being said, you're still looking to show him as having a criminal enterprise, right? And the racketeering, you need the two underlying acts. And it may be that, there's a garden variety of acts that you can use to be your two underlying crimes, right? And so what it may do is help to, quote, kill two birds with one stone, for lack of a better term, in terms of being one of the underlying crimes. So, yes, I think it gets you on the road towards the racketeering. But I would say that if there was something that is, quote, easier, and I don't know that anything's easy here, one that's more clear, I like that word better, that's more clearly shown here, I think there's an argument that you show pretty well of the transportation with intent to engage in prostitution.